Today, ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor and pleasure to sit with Greg Archer. Greg Archer is an author and multimedia entertainment journalist. His work covering the arts, family legacies, and change agents has appeared in Gannett, USA Today, Huffington Post, Palm Springs Life, and other outlets. His memoir, Grace Revealed, chronicles his Polish family's history during Stalin's deportation of Polish people. Learn more at www.gregarcher.com. Good morning, sir, and how are you?
Good morning. Good morning. I am good. I believe I'm evolving and spiraling up. I hope so. I'm good. I'm good. And how about you? How are you today?
I'm doing well today, struggling with a little bit of a voice thing, dealing with a 15-year-old teenager earlier this week, but I'm powering through, motoring through.
Motoring through. Good. Good.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good. Good.
So when you and I first met, you were with Eslin and the Eslin Institute, and this was
Yes.
coming off of an appearance at Wisdom 2.0. What was that like for you working at the Eslin Institute?
Well, Eslin's really great. I mean, it's such a easy thing to say. Eslin is great, but there are so many layers to Eslin. For the past 60 years, it has been pretty much doing incredible things and offering incredible spaces for people to do incredible things and find deeper connections within themselves and others. Eslin came about in the early 1960s and was part of the Human Potential Movement, founded it. And all the great minds at that time, everyone from like Joseph Campbell, Alan Watts, Ram Dass, came to Eslin at that time, and it was just such a vibrant time. And through the decades, it's kept on and kept evolving. And even today, in the midst of what's going on with everything that's been happening, especially this year, I think Eslin has really given people an opportunity to pause, reflect, go within, renew, and emerge somehow a little differently. So that's one of the great things about Eslin. It has been so impactful, I think, in that regard, is offering a great space for people.
Yeah, that change agents. What leaps out from me in that description is change agents.
Yeah, and I've been fortunate in having worked with them to connect with really great minds and really great people and change agents who are doing incredible things in the world, like yourself. I mean, I remember when I first came across you and your work at Wisdom 2.0 last year or earlier this year. Seems like last year now, and it's remarkable it's remarkable to think how many people are actually putting so much good out into the world. If you were to look at the media, you wouldn't really think that that's going on. But my experience as a journalist and as somebody who's done a lot of stories on people for Eslin is that there's so many people and so many organizations and groups doing tremendous work in the world to expand human potential, to make things move forward in a new way, to grow, to evolve. So it's quite extraordinary. I think when we start to focus on that rather than, I think, some of the images the media constantly gives us, it's probably better. Probably better. Yeah.
Yeah. If you could identify it, are there common threads that you come across in your experiences with quote unquote change agents?
Oh, yeah, that's a very great question. A common thread. Well, I would say that every change agent I have interviewed has had some sort of Joseph Campbell hero's journey, like where they have had to go through some curious adventure, misadventure, and come out transformed on the other side. So the common thread would be bravery, courage, and what's the word I'm looking for? Stamina, because I think when we start becoming more aware of what's going on with us in the world, it's kind of a curious catch-22, because then it's not often so comfortable. It's like, oh, okay, now I have this awareness, and now I have to do something about. I don't have to do something about it, but I can change. I have a deeper awareness about myself or a group or something, and now I have the ability and the opportunity to alter it for the better in most cases. So I would say those are the common threads: bravery, courage, stamina, transformation, definitely. Yeah. And some humbleness. I mean, the change agents, including yourself, that I have spoken to throughout the years, they're not in it really for them. It's to push something good forward or to bring people together. And I think that's really great.
Yeah. Yeah. Something we say in circle is if you spot it, you got it.
I like
So
that.
you
I
you
like
have you are describing something. So I'm going to turn and ask you about your hero's journey. What has
that.
been your hero's journey
How much time
that
do you
makes you a change agent?
How much time do you Well, what is my hero's journey? It's interesting. It's good to be asked these questions. It's really refreshing. So, my hero's journey has really, I mean, if I were to whittle it down to, like, it's all been about self-acceptance and self-love, really. That's been my hero's journey. My upbringing, I wasn't given opportunities or occasions to really, and many of us may not have, to really get to know ourselves and to understand who we are and what we're capable of. I was raised by two wonderful Polish immigrants who both survived the war. My mother and her family were taken from by Stalin with millions of other Poles and sent to labor camps in Siberia, and managed to survive that. And my father and his father were in German labor camps. So they did the absolute best that they knew how to do with what that they had to work with. So my journey, I think, because I've always wanted to be expressive and creative, or I was creative, was to understand that that's okay and to allow that. So that's one part of it. But I believe a greater chunk of my hero's journey is more recent, which is really turning toward answering the call or getting a sign to write about my Polish family and what they went through. And I kept getting into, how we kind of go through life and we get like a hint or a sign or something, it could be something serendipitous or synchronistic, like something as easy as the street lamp going off above your head when you're walking under and having a thought about something, which happens to me a lot. Or you're thinking about something and you're driving and you see a license plate that says, I don't know, go for it or something, or yes, like a personal license plate. I kept getting signs to write about my Polish family, like back since 2004. And I was like, I want to write about people in entertainment. I want to write about people that are doing cool things there and, who are philanthropic too. But I kept getting the sign. I kept getting these indications to write about them, mostly from my uncle who survived the journey, my mother's brother. So when I finally decided to do it, everything just really opened up. I was able to go to Poland to research where they lived, where they came from. And the biggest part of that journey was being an avid listener and collecting everybody's stories. So I really dove deep and got in there. I mean, for years I was tracking their story and comparing it to the trajectory of history and other people's stories who were going through that experience at the time. And I really got to know my family my mother's side of the family, my mother and her brothers, sisters. My grandmother, grandfather had passed, but I had gotten to know them in a very different way. And it was extremely intimate. It was like extremely personal to hear these tales of survival. So, you know, that has been a big part of my hero's journey, is to go into it rather than run away from it. And
Yes.
then not only to go into it, but to know that like once you're in it, it's like, okay, we're in something quite big here. And to kind of, I don't know, be calm in the center of the storm, or and keep going, you know? Um, and then on the other side of that, once the book came out, to really to really embrace something that I didn't think would happen, which was depression, anxiety, grief, and intergenerational family trauma. You know, I was fine getting through everything, you know, pretty much. But on the other side of it, it was like, oh, what just happened? Like
Yeah.
something just happened to me. So, and that has taken several years to kind of move through. It's been very fascinating to kind of step back and watch oneself in a detached way and go, oh, you're getting your energy back. You're getting your vibrancy back. And what
Yeah.
you've been through was not ordinary. These were mystical, deep experiences. So um, that was a very long-winded answer for your what has been my hero's journey question. But I think my journey has been to I think at the bottom line is it's been self-acceptance, self-love, and courage to go through those things that I just mentioned, you know.
Yeah. Self-acceptance, self-love, and courage. Yeah. When we were, going back and forth getting ready for this interview, you sent some stuff over, and so I looked into Grace Revealed. And the first thing that came up for me, because I'm a visual type person, and I put things together in my mind, and I likened it to the African diaspora.
Mm,
This is a story that's not really told often. People don't talk. There are, certain things that happen in history. There are certain uh, uh, instances where people are affected, and it contributes to intergenerational trauma, like you mentioned. And this piece here is not something that's talked about a lot. So, what did you learn about maybe intergenerational trauma within your family that affected you personally?
yeah, good question. Thank you for asking that. Yeah, it isn't a story that's heard. We hear, and we should hear, um, the horrors of Hitler and what Hitler did to people,
Yeah,
and and the war, and that horror that's been taught in the history books, but we don't often hear, or rarely hear, about Stalin's atrocities. And if you tally up his, kind of people who died under his regime and from what he did, it's there's different figures, but it's somewhere between 45 million to 60 million people,
yeah,
through various things, his own people, through imprisoning people and whatever. So you don't really often hear about Stalin going in, invading Poland, and taking Polish people out of their home and putting them into slave labor in concentration camps. That's not taught in the history books. And I think it was because Stalin became our ally eventually during the war, and everyone was probably just like, let's not bring that up.
yeah,
So my experience of, and my family and Poles, 18,000 of them actually were Polish refugees in Tanzania and East Africa, like all around East Africa. So it's very interesting, and you don't hear that either. So my experience of intergenerational family trauma, it's like this. Let's see, how can I say it so I don't water it down, so it's not, because it's very significant and it's very impactful, I think. Um, your ancestors experienced something over there, and that experience somehow is now affecting you over here. You're feeling it, you're feeling the ripple effects of it, you're experiencing things that reactions, behaviors, attitudes, thoughts that are not, it's like they are rooted back in time, and they are rooted back from the original, like, piercing of a wound or something that happened or event that occurred. And it's happening now, and you are enacting it, you're living it out, you're feeling it. And I should speak in first person. I'm feeling it. I felt it. I walked around feeling like a Polish refugee for the last few years, since I think probably the end of 2019. Everything started to feel like everything was coming back together for myself. Because I really started turning inward toward it and exploring it. But it's my family, they were refugees. They lost their home and they were wandering throughout, after they were imprisoned, they were set free in Russia in 1941 with many other Poles once Stalin joined the Allied forces. So they were refugees for like nearly a year, and then nearly 8 years in East Africa. So I find it interesting that in my own life, that a company I was working for and was thriving at as a journalist got bought out. It was a media takeover, and we were booted out. And I left my home to write this book, went back to Chicago from California. And from that point, I was pretty much, well, where's home? Like this theme of like, where's home? Like, I can't find home. Like, where is it? Is it here? Is it there? Am I home? Do I feel at home? Like, so for several years, I've been searching for a community, and that's how my experience showed up. And everybody else's, it's probably different for other people. It can show up in forms of anxiety and grief, rage, anger, at things that you don't quite like. Well, why am I angry or raging about something? My experience, it showed up, was this constant thirst and quest for home. What is it? Where is it? Why did it like escape me? Where's my community? How do I find it again? And I look back and it's just kind of eerily similar to, not exactly what my mother and her family went through, but it's hauntingly similar in the way of like, well, yeah, it's almost like a weird performance art project that I was subconsciously or not subconsciously acting out as these last few years unraveled. So interestingly enough, that the next book I'm finishing is really all about home and place and finding your way back home to yourself. And it tackles these particular issues, but in a sort of very, it's lighter, but it's also deep. It's funny, but it's also deep. So, but my experience of intergenerational family trauma is what I mentioned in the beginning. It's like my relatives felt it back there, experienced it back there, and suddenly over here, right here and now, it's affecting me. Like there's something going on deeply within my person and my experiences that is a direct result of that. I hope that makes sense.
It does. It does. I'm very familiar with that, and most of our listeners, I believe, will be very familiar with that. So my question in response to that is how do you find your way home when dealing with trauma? How do you find your way home? How did you find your way home?
Well, I found my humor helps, but community helps. Allies help. For me, meditation helped. Creativity or writing helped. Journaling, writing this down. Seeing a professional helped who deals with something like this.
Mm-hmm.
Modalities like EMDR, for instance, help to sort of rework the circuitry, because when you're constantly in a flight or fight response system, that's not going to be very good for your body in the long run. So things like that, the more that I was able to turn to something like meditation, EMDR, talking about it, not keeping it inside, having a trusted source or 3 or 10 or a group people were, not that, I could just kind of just blabber on and just tell them what I'm feeling and that's it. But just to kind of have somebody that you trust that is an ally and an advocate for you is really helpful, because I think these things are so deep and sometimes very mystical in a way, or that we're big, but we're almost too small. We can't do it alone,
Yeah.
So those are the things that helped me, especially meditation, um, and to notice what's going on with my breathing, or what's going on with my mind. Like if I can take several steps back and notice, my gosh, my mind is really kind of is racing. That's very interesting. And then I can bring it back to my breath. So those things in yoga, definitely movement and yoga. I think movement is a great catalyst. Dance, yoga, movement. I think it's one thing out of many things that can definitely help. And that's
Yeah.
what helped me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Something
also,
that,
like looking in the mirror and going, I teach fitness and I do crystal sound bowl healings, so,
mhm.
and I often tell people to look in the mirror and realize they're looking at a warrior. You are a warrior. You're amazing. You're awesome. You're confident. You're sexy. You're vibrant. I don't see anything wrong with going to the mirror and looking at yourself and telling yourself that, because we have to, it's good to have allies, and it's good to be our own allies too. So,
Right.
so yeah, those are
Positive
things that help me.
self-affirmations, they definitely don't hurt. One of the things we say here at Inside Circle often is not all prisons have walls. And
I love that.
oftentimes I can build a prison within my own mind that keeps me incarcerated, and never see an actual physical prison.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what about you? Like, what are some ways you found your way back home?
I found my way back home by going inside and destroying those internal prisons that I had built up over time.
Wow.
Those things that I utilized to limit myself, those old belief, that stinking thinking, as I like to call it.
I remember in the program in Al-Anon, I used to go to Al-Anon quite a bit. And still, actually, I do at time, but when I moved to San Francisco, I went to Al-Anon quite a bit. And I remember that. And I would go to all sorts of 12-step meetings, and they used to mention that phrase, and I loved it. I loved
Yeah,
it.
yeah. That internal work. Nothing for me. I have yet to find something that beats that internal work for me. Going inside and looking inside. And you talked about the piece with the getting in touch with the body, the somatic piece. Those things are tremendous when it comes to freedom. At
Yeah.
least that's been my personal experience.
Yeah. So what do you do when you go within and then you find something that doesn't feel comfortable?
I sit with it. I sit with it. I notice it. I acknowledge it, and try and find the space to honor it, as opposed to rejecting it, as opposed to judging it as something, bad or evil, or something that has to be done away with. So
Hmm.
that there's not that war going on with a part of myself. There's more, I look for acceptance for those parts. Now, they might not be parts that I want to see running the show, but they are parts.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I totally get that. This year, a big, as we were going through so many different stages of what we've been going through with the pandemic, I came in touch with a part of myself, a very hurt teenager. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, I thought I'd kind of, and I love the way that I phrase it, like dealt with that, like in different stages or something of my development, or, but it was such an opportunity to really sit and be with that sort of presence, it's
Mhm.
like, and get to know that part of me, and that young boy in a way as well, and understand what that young boy was feeling, going through, and the lengths that he went through to stay safe, and self-preservation. I was quite amazed at like the strength of that young boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite an illuminating discovery this year. I mean, it's still going on. It's still
Yeah.
very much going on. But what reminded me of that was when you said those aspects of us that we might not want to just run the show, because that I realized was like how much of certain things were run by this sort of um, unsettled part of me,
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
this hurt teenager that has either wanted attention or safety or something, and that
Yeah.
didn't get resolved at that time and is now acting itself out in this time, so.
Yeah. And it plays out it can play out in strange ways in my life, in hurtful and harmful ways in my life when I'm unaware of that. So when you got the chance to sit with your teenager, were you able to find out what it was he needed?
I think he needed to just be a teenager. I think what what Greg needed um, was time, space, attention, validation, but like the good kind, not the kind of like, um, love, like really love and acceptance, and understanding. It's like, oh, these are, really deep things you're going through. So, and then, yeah, so those are the main things. Those are big. Those are really
Yeah.
big.
Yeah. Those are big for most humans I come across. Those are big things. And they sound like simple things, but sometimes they can seem so hard to come by.
It's true because then at some point then we have to reparent, that part of us that didn't feel parented or wasn't parented. Um, I don't know why those two things came out, because you can be parented but not feel parented. So, but you have an opportunity to now really repair it, and then you're walking around. It's like, wow, I have like a teenager I'm living with. So who is this person? Like it gave me such an opportunity to get to know that person, because I think at that time that person didn't feel like he was known, or that there was anybody really getting to know him, you know.
Yeah.
So there weren't that many people for me at that time, because my parents were going through a divorce and there was just so much stuff. And I was gay. I didn't know how to come out because it was like the early 80s. And I'm like, well, okay, what's this mean? Because I know my family is probably not going to accept this, and it feels kind of weird. And but to understand who that person was and to sort of show up for that person for me, you know, that's been the big theme of this year. And that's like the beauty of like turning into the shadow. It's like, all right, well, we're all going to sit still this year because there's nowhere to go. So what's in the shadow? Let's take a look. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, there you are. It's very fascinating.
Yeah. So how does it look for you now to show up for him and to show him love and acceptance and all of those things that he needed and felt like he didn't have way back yonder?
It feels good. It feels like I don't like the feeling of it's like coming like full circle or something, or it feels good. It feels vulnerable, to tell you the truth. It feels really vulnerable, because it's like there's also a little bit of, well, who is that person if he's not that person doing what he's doing? Who is that person if he's not, quote unquote, wounded or hurt? And so it's kind of vulnerable, because I feel like I'm tapping into like, well, who I really am, without these different kind of layers like smeared, or life circumstances like on me.
Mhm.
And then I think that goes back to what you're talking about, is just going within, Because when we do that, we get to feel, experience, and have some sort of awareness to a strength and a love that is us, right? So it's great in a way, and it's really vulnerable too. It's new. It feels very new to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Vulnerability. Could you, if you're able to, can you go a little deeper into what vulnerability looks like for you?
What does vulnerability look like? It's a very good question. Well, vulnerability to me is being present, and I think being present to the unknown or not knowing. Vulnerability to me is, and then being in it and okay with it, rather than like making a mad dash somewhere else, to some other thing that'll distract you or distract me, and not sort of be with it. I think it's a real gift when you can just be with it. So vulnerability for me is, more and more I'm learning, is being okay with what is unknown, or the unknown, or what I don't know.
Yeah.
And that could be fear, apprehension, curious, like, oh yeah, I don't know. But that's what that is for me. I'm learning it. I keep learning it. I don't know if we ever stop, really. I don't know if we ever really truly, I don't know if we master it and then ta-da, we've arrived, that type of thing. I think it's part of the human condition, maybe. We get opportunities to practice vulnerability over and over and over again. This year has been very much like that for the whole world,
Yeah.
at the same time, which is really a rare occurrence. So, yeah.
Yeah. Now you said the word, and I was thinking it. You used the word fear. And for those who might be listening to this, and when we start talking about something like vulnerability and fear comes up, how do you sit with the two?
Well, I have a wicked sense of humor. So, if I'm in a flow of me in my life, and I'm doing me pretty much, and that for me is creating, writing, talking to people, doing this sort of thing, but like what you're doing for me, and the other way around, I'm interviewing people as a journalist. When I am expressing what I feel is my God-given gift, it's usually more, it's usually easier for me to notice when I'm vulnerable and when I'm fearful. And when I'm fearful, and then when I'm in that arena and that sort of comes up, it's like, oh, you got a little fear around that. And I feel a little more empowered, because I have the tools to like go, okay, let's sit with that for a little bit. Let's be with that for a little bit. What are you afraid of? Who's afraid? Is it you? Is it the teenager from 15 years old? Is it somebody who's 8? Is it, what is it? Like, what is it and who is it?
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm able, usually when I'm typically when I'm in my life and I'm living it and I'm flowing with it, I'm able to kind of identify it a little easier. When I'm not doing what I feel like I've come here on this planet to do, it's a little more challenging. It's a little more frenetic, and it takes me longer to get to, oh, I'm acting out of, my parents both had issues around money. And these last few years, I've noticed, like, what's going on here? Like, I am making and taking actions that are based from fear, because of fear of lack or fear of financial resources or something, and I really had to stop and be with it and like be still with it. And like, I had to halt, in the 12-step program, if you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, halt, you know?
Yeah.
So I had to really stop and take a look at what was driving me and why, like, and like, what am I afraid of? And who is really afraid? Is it based in something that is like real and now, or is it a response from something that happened when I was a young kid, a teenager, or from another life event that may not have fully moved through me or something? Such uh, there's so we I think we really benefit ourselves when we take the time to ask ourselves these questions, because there's so much of us wanting to uh, come out, you know,
Yeah.
you know.
Sounds like you find a way to get present, to be in the moment.
Definitely be present, be in the moment. Like a lot of yoga practices teach, come back to the breath.
Mhm.
How is my, like, where am I in my body? Like, where's my breath right now? And like, what am I feeling? Where am I feeling it? Am I feeling tension in the chest? For me, a lot of fear is like up here or in my belly.
Mhm.
So when I know that I'm like in a flight or fight mode, my chest usually feels a little thick and contracted, or my belly feels a little queasy, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's being with it, and then just being with it. And I find, when I turn toward it rather than run away from it, it tends to move or transform quicker, rather than, not looking at it at all, or going on to the next thing or the next thing, or then, picking up like something like a phone that may distract me, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything in your life right now that you feel, or there's a part of you that feels you're not doing enough of in the world?
Mm. Well, I am transitioning. It's like a big life transition right now. So, yeah, but I'm excited about it, and I'm excited about that I'm going to be doing it. I'm kind of moving forward and diving really deeply into finishing my next book. It's pretty much done. Um, and and this scares me, I'm feeling called to be like, I have several entrepreneurial projects
Mhm.
um, that are really like fun and creative. And I'm feeling led to step into that more in the new year. Um, but currently, and I would say this whole last year has been, I haven't felt extremely like I was showing up for a lot of my creative work, or the creative work I feel like I've come here to do. I feel like just, life circumstances and things, and trying to find a new home, which I have here in Sedona, which is great. Um, that was sort of pushed aside a little bit more than I typically have experienced. Um, so yeah, to answer your question, creating a little bit more daily, and then also like kind of exploring the possibilities of these bigger kind of projects that I feel like are calling to me, because that's a different skill set for me. I'm
Mhm.
kind of like this big idea, big mind person. And, but here's one thing I learned: I don't have to do it all alone, and that's like busting a myth. It's like, oh, I don't have to do it all alone. I don't have to take care of it. I have
Yeah.
to, I don't have to, wait, I don't have to take care of it all. I don't have to take care of it all for my family or for this group or that group. And I can actually invite people to get excited about what I'm doing. So
You
that's kind
used the
of
word
cool.
earlier, community.
Yeah, community. Yeah.
Yeah. Community is important.
Yeah, I think that's another kind of vulnerability that I feel like I'm being led to step into, is like inviting people to, I love this, to participate with me in something, or to show up for me in kind of a, yeah, which is kind of like, wow, that goes right to the 15-year-old that felt like nobody showed up, you know? So that's
Yeah.
a curious little dance. It's like, so it's like, yes, I hear you and I love you, Greg, and keep moving forward anyway. I got this. Hold my hand. We're moving forward, you know? But keep
Yeah.
telling me how you feel, because that's going to be a good indicator. So,
Yeah. The hope and desire is that one day the men and women and youngsters inside get access at this medium, this podcast, and they get to hear from some of our guests. And you've had the opportunity to be exposed to a lot of transformation. So if you had the opportunity to speak directly to them, could you speak about what transformation looks like for you and
yeah.
possibly what it could look like for them?
Whew. Well, for me, that's a great question. Um, I have a feeling transformation has a sense of humor. This is what I've come to this year. Transformation has a sense of humor. It may not be comfortable, like from point A to Z, or various points from A to Z, but ultimately, if we keep if you know if ultimately if we keep moving forward or doing the next thing, the very next thing, the very next thing, when we don't know even what to do, something will occur. We will feel something. We will feel an experience of transformation in my life. So I would say to folks, especially young folks who have a dream and a hope and a desire, um, that um, the bottom line is that you're wonderful, you're loved, you're brilliant. I mean, that's it. You're this beautiful person that was brought into this world, and no other equation is gonna, like, even if in our own mental equations where we add like this plus this equals that, I'm not enough, I can't do it, I'm a loser, whatever. The real equation is that we are all vibrant, wonderful, creative human beings, and there's no like, there's no, that's it, that's why we're here. We are these beautiful bundles of stardust in human flesh, experiencing some kind of experience here, and hopefully a lot of it is with love. So my I would say to those who are wanting to do something and moving forward with a dream or hope or desires is, do it and have a sense of humor once in a while. Like, it doesn't have to be also super serious. And know that if you have the idea and you have the feeling of like really wanting to go for that thing out there, or even something within yourself, like, I want to transform and shift something within me, like this, there's these series of behaviors, or there's a relationship I'm in, or there's a job that I don't feel like resonates with me at all, and I know I'm not supposed to be there, then if it's coming from within here, then that's, that, listen to that and then follow like the next clue. If you don't have the whole like thing mapped out, and none of us often do, it's like, follow the next clue, follow the next little rose petal that the universe is going to drop in front of you. And there will be a rose petal. You'll be standing in line one day at a grocery store or something, and someone will say something, and it'll be like, aha, I'm supposed to look that up, or I'm supposed to connect with that person or something. So I would say, keep moving forward and know that you have it within you to do and to achieve what it is that you are feeling from within inside of you. Because if it wasn't in there to begin with, it wouldn't be. I mean, if it's there, it's possible. There's a route. There's a route to take. Um, and have faith in yourself. We're much stronger than we ever give ourselves credit for. We're incredibly brave and strong, I think. And I think we forget, we just, we forget. So,
Thank you for that offering.
yeah.
Now I'd ask you to give us three things you're proud of yourself about.
Wow, I love these questions. 3 things that I'm proud of myself about. I'm proud of the book that came through me about my Polish family. I'm proud that I showed up for that in all stages of it, before, during, and after. The resistance, the diving into it, the doing it, the coming out on the other side and going, oh, now there's this emotional stuff that I have to, that I'm seeing that could use some attention. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that whole experience. It's been a curious, mystical, deep, juicy journey. I wouldn't have traded it for anything else. I'm proud to have served in a community in the Santa Cruz, California area for about 15 years. I was running a media place there, a weekly magazine and a series of newspapers, or a series of a weekly newspaper and a series of magazines from that, and freelancing for other magazines in the Bay Area and other places nationally. And I'm really proud of being part of that community. It's such a vibrant, creative community. And I felt like we were all like rooting for each other and rising up at the same time. And so I'm really proud of the creative team that was at that media outlet, and the people in Santa Cruz who are just the most juicy, creative people. I mean, that whole county is filled with so many creative people. I was very surprised. I'd lived in Monterey before that, which was great too. But I was just astounded, like left and right all the time, about the people that I've met in that area. Everyone from Wallace J. Nichols, who's part of the Blue Mind movement now, a great marine biologist, researcher, to other folks at UCSC. And so I'm really proud of the relationships that we created, everything that happened during that time. And let's see, a third one. What am I proud? You know what? I'm pretty proud of that when I ask for a sign from the universe and that it's like given to me, that I tend to follow it.
Yeah.
Or like, even if it's like on a personalized license plate that says wisdom, and I was just asking for a sign, and that sign to me is like, you got wisdom and there's wisdom around you. But what I would do when I would see that personal license plate, if it's not stopped or parked, I would chase it down until it parked and then snap that photo. I'd ask them if I could snap that photo. I mean, I would do funny, crazy, I've done crazy, quirky things by following signs from the universe. So I'm proud of that. Yeah. I like that. And
When
loving
you
myself,
were,
myself more deeply.
there it is.
Yeah. Especially this last half decade, definitely.
Yeah. When you were 6, what did they call you? Gregory?
They called me Greg, or Grzegorz in Polish.
Jugush?
Yeah.
What would you say to 6-year-old Jugush today if you could?
Wow. Well, I would say to him, keep using your imagination. There are so many great experiences ahead of you, and that you are rare and remarkably gifted and so lovable. Yeah.
Lovely.
That's what I would say. And then I'd give him a hug. Yeah. What would you say to your six-year-old Eldra?
What I would say to 6-year-old Eldra is have fun and be a kid as long as you can. Because he grew up way too quick. And stopped having fun way too early. Yeah.
I like
Thanks for asking.
Yeah, yeah. I was curious. Yeah, yeah. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Is there anything we didn't cover today that you'd like to leave the people with?
Let's see. That's a great question too. I think that the thing I'd like to leave people with is maybe an observation and we live in something happened and now we seem to be living in a world where we have so many things that are calling for our attention. Everything from, let's say, our relationships or our jobs or I mean, these are things that were always probably there, but it seems like in the last decade or so, we have so many more things that are calling for our attention or wanting to get our attention. News, media, the news feed on our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. How liked are you on either of those things? There's so many things that are calling for our attention. And my experience is that the more I have turned to my close posse of friends and inward to myself, that whole other stuff out there, it doesn't quite have the supercharge that I once gave it. And so once again, I think the lesson is it's not really out there, it's really in here. Yeah. It's in here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keys to our freedom are within.
Yes. Yes. Amen to that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can learn more at www.gregarcher.com. Is there anywhere else that the people can find you?
You know, I am on social media, but I don't go there often. So, but if you're there, take a look. I usually post inspiring things. I'm not really posting pictures of like selfies or things like that, but you can go to Amazon.com and look up Grace Revealed. It's there. And the next book will be out. It's called Couch Surfing Through the Universe. And it comes out probably the middle to fall of next year in 2021. And I'm looking forward to that. And a lot of other books behind that and other creative things too. But my website will always be kind of up to date and will show people where to go. So, yeah.
All right. Thanks, Greg, for coming in and sitting with us for a while and sharing some of who you are.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. And thank you for the work that you are doing in the world. You know, it's astounding and remarkable. It's wonderful to witness. And thank you for having conversations like these. They matter so much. So thank you.
You're most welcome, sir. You're most welcome. Anytime.